Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. This is Mark, your host, and today I'm joined with Josh Cox out in California. Man, what's going on? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Excited to jump into this conversation with you. You're a young guy in a big leadership role, running a business, built this thing pretty much from the ground up, from what I understand, right? And
Correct.
leading a kick-ass team and taking names. So let's start off with the opening question, which is, what does it mean for you to be intentional?
So intentional, you dive into what does that mean? It's waking up every day with a purpose, whether it's a Monday, whether it's a Saturday, what are you setting out to accomplish? I mean, some people say, wow, you're intentional even about your Saturdays and Sundays. Well, I mean, intentionality even goes down to planning to take a nap to catch up on some rest. I mean, you become, so deep in what you do to plan for your next week or what you've missed out on or those kinds of things. I mean, I think that's really what it means to be intentional, is to just every day have a purpose, even if it's as small as taking a nap.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that maybe that scares some people off a little bit? Because I don't mean this in a negative way to your answer, but I'm just thinking about a lot of people don't do the work to be intentional because it requires commitment.
It does. And I think you kind of go back to the thermostat. Most people like their thermostat set at a 65, 70, type degree, but you get up to a 90, 95. I mean, even the most driven people have to check themselves and say, hey, I'm now operating at a 75-degree thermostat. I got to kick it back up to a 90. I mean,
Yeah.
that's on that intentionality of you've got to get up and do it every day.
Yeah. I like that analogy. Yeah, that's cool because it's like, hey, most people operate right around 70 degrees, 68,
Yep.
70. They keep it there, and that's good. That's good for most people.
It's comfortable. It's comfortable.
It's
And I think if
comfortable.
you're trying to get out of a comfort zone, you got to turn it up to 90, 95. I mean, some people turn it up over 100, which
Yeah.
those people you got to take in small bits because they're at 100 all the time.
My infrared sauna goes to 150.
There you go. There you
That's
go.
that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, for long periods.
Yeah, right on, man. Cool. What are you guys doing? What's your take on attracting and retaining good talent? A lot of people seem to struggle with it. You guys have been growing and adding to the team. So what do you do?
We have, we've been in business. January will be the start of year 10. Retention is always big. And I think the way you can intentionally retain talent is make sure everyone feels appreciated. I mean, one of the biggest things that I do is it's my goal daily to build someone up. Bring them, always expect them to get to the next level. I mean, from our delivery drivers to our general manager to everyone kind of in between. You got to make sure they're appreciated, uh, because I mean, if not, what are they doing it for? And I think that's what gets lost in some of these Fortune 500 corporate companies is, you're kind of just a body in some of these cases, which is unfortunate. And but to be able to retain people and do it successfully is make them feel appreciated. Whether that's
Mm-hmm.
with compliments, compensation. I mean, realistically, at the end of the day, even if it takes a little bit of your bottom line away, make sure these people feel appreciated, and that'll lead to some retention. And again, build them up to be a better self of what they're trying to be.
Yeah, there's so many opinions and ways and tactics and
Yeah.
strategies, obviously, to do that. But you play it simple right at the onset, which I love. And unfortunately, I mean, not a lot of people have mentioned this in response to this question over 30 some interviews I've done so far. Make them feel appreciated.
Yeah,
It
I think you have to. I mean,
doesn't take a ton of time or money.
no, it's kind of a simple tactic. I mean, if they feel appreciated, doing things, going out of the way to make them, you know, feel that they're needed,
Mm-hmm.
I think that lends to retention, bar none.
Yeah. I learned from Tony Robbins years ago that the number one contributor to happiness as humans is progress.
Hmm.
Right. So when I'm progressing, when I feel like I'm progressing toward a goal, feel like I'm progressing, I'm getting better in my role, whatever the case may be, it contributes to my overall happiness. And I think what happens for a lot of people, and you referred to larger organizations, and I just want to kind of tap back because there's a lot of intentional people inside large organizations, but this is where your people get lost. Intentional
Yep.
leaders inside large organizations is they probably stop feeling like what they're doing is progressing them, and they're not totally connected to how it progresses the overall mission.
Well, and I think you see it in segments. You see segments of certain businesses that, do retain people. And it's like, okay, why? You look at it and you dive in. It's like, okay, there's that person feels appreciated, or that leader uses the tactic of appreciation to retain people and get them to, progress, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's an old quote. I've posted this many times. It says that people people will do almost anything for leaders that make them feel appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I believe that
So
100%.
yeah, big time. All right, man. What let's talk about building culture in a small business. How important is culture? How do you go about intentionally building that in your space?
I think you got to earn the respect of your team. I mean, first and foremost is you earn the respect of your team. The culture kind of follows. Um, it's not hard to do. You just got to make them, you know, perform to your level, but show the respect to get them there. Um, if you're not building those up around you, then the culture and retention it gets lost. I mean, it goes back to question number two.
Mm-hmm. So dive into the earning the respect of your team. What does that look like from a leadership perspective? Give us one or two specifics on how that works for you.
Well, I think you got to listen to your team. I mean, listen to the critique. I mean, it's cliche, but having an open door policy. I mean, my door's always open. Come and talk to me. I mean, before you start to build animosity, before there's issues or turmoil amongst themselves, come and talk to me. Let's see if we can try and solve that. Which I think having that policy earns respect. Of I can walk into Josh's office anytime and hammer this out, and I you can have the process of okay, you can come and talk to me anytime, but you also got to react on it. I've had some issues in the past where a couple of people have come to me and said, "Hey, this is the situation. What are we going to do about it?" Well, I put a plan together and we enact it, and then I think that's kind of where the respect comes from is listening to what's needed and then reacting on it. Not saying you got to do everything and that comes your way because that's not possible, but at least trying to make an attempt to solve that issue every single time.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. And so you're actually listening and then taking action based on the feedback or the requests that you're getting from the team. I ask that as a qualifier because I think a lot of people will say will hear earn the respect of your team and automatically interpret that as grind harder. Right. And
Yeah, and see,
true.
I don't see that on my side as
Yeah.
grind harder. I mean, yeah, that'd be great, but that's not realistically what we're
Right.
trying to accomplish in the long run.
Yeah, yeah. There's the old guard that I see a lot of people, where it's just, well, we respect the guy because he works really hard. He's dependable. He gets the job done, and that's important. That's an important
It
aspect of
is.
our respect to the team. And right, man, like you can never, if you're on the team of the guy who just outworks everyone, well, it's pretty tough, in my opinion, to be able to repeat that culture. Because if that person leaves or retires, what happens to your culture?
Yeah, it kind of goes with the one
Mm-hmm.
that left.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Cool, man. What's been the biggest hurdle that you've had to overcome in your role?
I think the biggest hurdle for me, you started out the interview saying I'm young, I'm 30, started this business 10 years ago, so I was 20 at that point. I think the biggest hurdle's just been uncharted waters. I mean, I've never had a job in the past that I've really been able to latch onto and learn and have a mentor. I mean, I've had plenty of mentors and people throughout the last 10 years, but before that, when starting this, going to college, doing those different things, there wasn't really someone or something that stood out that I really was like, oh, I'm gonna model that in whatever I do one day. So yeah, my biggest hurdle as a leader has just been trying to pick nuggets out of I read a lot, trying to figure out where can we implement things? What do we do to change this? If this isn't working, what do we do? Yeah, just really, I guess I say uncharted waters. That's a nice way to put it, but it's inexperience. I mean, it's inexperience as a leader has been my biggest hurdle. Trial and error.
Yep. And yeah, well, just so you know, once you get to be 40, it's still going to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't change.
I learned that one the hard way. I was like, man, when does it get easy? No, it's
Yeah,
not.
it doesn't. It doesn't.
It really doesn't, unless you want to quit, right? Or unless you want to be a 68-degree guy.
Yeah, and that's not me. Not wired that way. So I'm perfectly fine with
Yeah.
the uncharted waters and trial and error.
What's your set point? You like about 92 or what's
Right around that 90. I mean, there's certain times during the year where I'll really crank it up, or for a certain month of the year, whether I'm trying to do some sort of fitness challenge, or
mm,
read some book that really was inspirational. Like, okay, I'm going to crank it up a little bit. I understand that you can't keep it cranked up to the 100 year round, but picking some time throughout the year to really crank it up.
yeah. I think this is, then we're coming back to that analogy again, but it's when you think about it like a thermostat, right? When I need it hot, I can make it hot. When
Yeah.
I need to dial it back, we can dial it back. And that's
Mm-hmm.
all based on what are the results, I guess, that I need to be producing or we need to be producing that time of year, man.
Well, and I also look at it too. There's a lot of separation days. Where if I'm at 92 and all the competition is at 68. I mean, we're taping this the day before Thanksgiving. I mean, we're in the office. I'll be in the office most of today. I'll be in the office the day after Thanksgiving, just because we're in town and those kinds of things. But create some separation from your competition, and to be able to do that, you've got to be turned up to that 90 plus. You've got to look for those opportunities for separation day.
Good stuff, man. What's been your biggest win so far?
I would say that the team respects me as a leader. I think that's based on work ethic and passion for what we do, which is great because they all try and match it. I mean, I don't expect them to match my work ethic, my passion. When you're the owner, you can't expect that kind of passion. Uh, but seeing people try to attempt the work ethic, the passion, all that's great. You talked about when someone in your organization's the grinder, the best guy you've got, and they move on, that kind of dies with them. My example of that is Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady leads the Patriots to how many Super Bowls? Then he moves on to the Bucks and wins another Super Bowl. I mean, what are the Patriots doing today? I saw a report that Bill Belichick doesn't know who he's starting on Sunday. I mean,
Mm,
that's a perfect example of when someone else moves out. So that's why retention is key, and can't expect people not to retire or not to move on, but trying to have the culture around that to where there's someone else that can step into that role.
mm.
And unfortunately, I think the Patriots kind of did a poor job of getting someone in place to replicate Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady's probably not replicated. The dude's got a thermostat at 100 all the time, from what it seems. I mean, he'd get to the gym at 6, be the first one in there. Guys would try and beat him to the gym. He's there at 4 a.m., when he was first starting his career. So, uh, yeah, I think the biggest win as a leader is just getting people to try and mirror your work ethic. That's been my biggest win so far.
Absolutely. It speaks to systems too, because if you don't have that system to produce a good solid backup, then you just don't have one. And there's something special about the Bradys and the Jordans and the Kobe's and so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth, right? That's unique. They just outwork everybody. They stay,
Yeah.
they do other practices, but which, by the way, from an intentional leadership standpoint, I wish more people would pay attention to how the goats, like that, how well they take care of themselves.
Yep.
They take care
Well,
of
and
the.
I think that's a perfect, it's a segment kind of into one of your other questions, but reading and following like a Tim Grover, who
Yeah.
was Michael Jordan's trainer, was Kobe's trainer, is presently Russell Wilson's trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what they do to take care of themselves on a day-to-day basis, and look what they put them through to continue to excel at the level they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm talking getting into like supplementation, exercise, stem cell treatments. I mean,
Well, you
there's
talked about
yeah,
your infrared sauna. I mean, even down to chiro treatment, different things like that. I mean, there's so much that you can do for yourself that, I mean, it takes money. It's not cheap, and these guys make millions and millions of dollars to be able to take care of themselves. But you got to look at, okay, what can I do? Maybe that bag of chips isn't a good idea. I mean, even down to that level.
Yeah. All right. Who have you admired most over the course of your career?
So there's an older gentleman in the industry, seasoned. He's technically a sales rep of mine for a generic chemical company. He's ran multiple large companies as CEO before stepping into a consultant role towards the end of his career. So I met him about 8 years ago, and I was a kid at that point, 22, who knew very little about our industry. But since our first conversation, the guy's never led me astray, whether it was for his benefit or not.
Mm-hmm.
I've never gotten advice from him that I've been like, oh, that was in his favor, not in mine. He's gotten me information throughout our relationship of, doesn't matter if it's for good or bad for his well doing. It was, what was best for me, and that's admirable, especially for taking on a kid that you don't know what's going to turn out. Are you wasting your time? Those kinds of things. So, I mean, my biggest person that I've admired in my career is this gentleman who's really just a leader in his space. And we all talk about it like, man, we're dreading the day that he retires. You talk about a goat that moves on.
Yeah.
That's him.
Yeah. Awesome. It's always those people that pour so much back into. They create the win-win-win for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, even if it's not an instant gratification win for them, it'll be a win in the long run. And I think realizing that at an early point in your career will pay dividends throughout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bet, man. What books are you liking right now? What sticks out to you that's helpful?
So one of the books that I've read recently, and it goes again, kind of the theme of our conversations, that thermostat is when the thermostat gets turned down or it starts to cool off a little bit, what can we do to bring it back up? One of the books I read, it was, I think last year, year before, was Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Mm.
He tells the story of an overweight, poverty-stricken man who was abused as a kid who becomes a Navy SEAL. It took him several times to go through Navy SEAL training to succeed, but this guy is intense. I mean, he's something, a switch flip that this guy is. If you don't know who David Goggins is, go on YouTube. I will say that if you've never heard the F word before, maybe don't read this book because it's intense and there's a lot of them that are thrown around. But yeah, one that's good for if you need your thermostat or you feel like I'm just not holding myself accountable to my full
Yeah.
potential. Read that book and it'll amp you up of, man, I'm really not doing enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Goggins definitely does it for me there, and he came into my life at a really crucial time when his book first came out here, going back 2019, I think it was. And my nephew actually lived with me at the time. My nephew had been going through a tough time after he got out of the Marines, a lot of mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a couple of different things, but one of the things he came down and lived with me, and I got him started on reading. And so he read Can't Hurt Me
Mm-hmm.
and ended up getting back into the military and ended up at Buds ultimately.
Oh, wow.
His goal became to come, and he didn't make it through Buds. He quit, but I mean, to go from
Oh, yeah.
borderline from suicidal to fully like back
Yeah.
in shape, mentally healthy, made it that far, gave him a goal to shoot for. And so we had a lot of Goggins. We did a road trip one day, about 7 hours one way. And between the road trip out and the road trip back, we crushed the audiobook
Yeah. It's awesome.
together. And
Yeah.
then yeah, so that's a great motivator. Another one that gets me, I don't know if you've read this. I think he's a California guy originally. Tim Kennedy.
I haven't.
So he wrote a book called Scars and Stripes,
Huh.
which, given you the background in your office here, those of you that
Yeah. Yeah.
big American flag, wooden
Yeah.
American flag signed hanging on the wall back there. But yeah, so Tim Kennedy wrote Scars and Stripes, and he's done some really cool work when like when Biden left in that administration left all of our allies hanging out to dry in Afghanistan. I mean, Tim spent time in Afghanistan, but he got his people together. They went and bought airplanes, like 737s, and got them into Kabul. And they went out in the streets and they found our allies and brought them home.
Wow. Wow.
So where the military wasn't allowed to, the State Department couldn't handle it. They couldn't go in, with the Taliban closing in on them and like literally executing people all around. They went and got all of our people, got them on planes, and got them home.
Wow. Yeah, I'll check that one out.
Yeah, it's a great book. He covers his whole story, and then he started a program called Sheepdog Response, which trains everyday guys like you and me to be able to defend our households and
Oh, cool.
be the front line if things go south, in society. So
Interesting.
I'm very
Another one on that, David Goggins. If you haven't read Jesse Itzler's book, Living with a Seal,
yeah.
that's a good one because that's it. He paid Goggins to live with him for 30 days and pretty
Mm-hmm.
much just he paid the dude to kick his ass. I mean, that's the bottom line of the book, and it's hilarious. It's a much more lighthearted read, but
Mm-hmm.
still like, wow, this guy is intense.
Yeah. All right. I could probably place a bet on this, but what do you do to keep your energy up and stay productive?
Set lofty goals. I mean, I've got my goal sheet here that's at my desk year round. I set them at the end of one year, going into the next, adjust them as needed. Um, get up with intention 7 days a week. I've kind of bought into the 10x rule of Grant Cardone of
Mm-hmm.
multiply your goals by 10. I mean, if you're gonna fail and you're gonna fail, but even if you do a fraction of 10x of what you originally set, you're light years ahead. In 2023, really took exercise and diet, going back to taking care of yourself, really put emphasis on exercise, diet, supplements, making sure that we're firing on all cylinders, doing infrared sauna, trying to get myself to do more of the cold plunge type stuff, all
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of things to really keep the energy up. I mean, I'm still guilty of a Diet Coke in the afternoon. My
That's your
my
vice.
one, yeah, my one vice, don't smoke, don't chew, but yeah, Diet Coke, man, I can't seem to get away from that one. But
Yeah.
those are ways to keep my energy up.
That's good. Have you done 75 hard yet?
I did do
Yeah.
75 hard, completed it about a year ago. Saw some really good benefits. I've tried it again recently. It's hard to get motivated to do it a second time, but I
Mm-hmm.
completed it once. I think I've done it 4 times. I've gotten far. I failed the first time, on day like 52 or something. I forgot to
Mm.
take my damn picture. I mean,
Oh
the
man.
most mundane of the tasks in 75 hard. I
Yeah.
forgot, but
Yep. Ugh. That's rough. I saw one guy who's in a mastermind that I'm a part of. He got to day 73 and
oh,
he fell asleep with a quarter gallon of water in his jug.
oh shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Everything
just
else.
a small task. I mean,
Yeah.
you're doing 2 workouts a day, one being outside, you're drinking a gallon of water, you're reading 10 pages of nonfiction, you're taking a picture. It's everyone I talk to, it's the mundane tasks that they end up forgetting that resets them.
Yeah.
It's not the 2 workouts, it's not the 10 pages, it's the water, it's the picture, it's yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. But it's such a good reflection of life because that program with those 6 things that you got to do every day, checking every single thing off, or else you start over. And here's the end. This is maybe even makes it harder. It's free,
It's free.
right? Because you're not
Yeah.
paying
No.
$50 a month or $100 a month to go to the gym to do it. It's just free. It's a free thing you do. You don't have to have a membership at all. Just go
No.
outside,
Yep.
go to your garage. I go to my garage and do it. So it's one of those things where it shows you where you are not intentional
It
because
does.
it exposes everything.
Yeah. And it goes back to the thermostat again. I mean, we keep reverting back to that. When I feel like my thermostat's set too low, 75 hard, whether I complete it or not, it's one way to get my act back in gear of getting into a system, getting into a schedule, doing all these things to really get myself,
Yeah.
motivated again.
Right on, man. Yeah, it definitely showed for me. We started teaching people differently. So what is the intentional protocol that you need to show up and start your day at work? That's
Yeah.
because without those intentional protocols, people we're good for 5 days, we're good for 15 days, but man, day 25, day 35, day 55, things go off the rails. You get a little cold, get sick, somebody quits, life gets hard, right? And we get off
Yeah.
weeds, and if we don't have those protocols to come back to keep us on that intentional pathway, then we get off in the weeds.
Yep.
So cool, man. Good stuff here. So what's one big thing you want to improve on going into 2024?
One of the things to improve on is it's cliche, but it's working on the business, not always in the business. I've built a team that I expect them to be intentional daily. So let them do their job and not interject. I couldn't tell you how many draft emails I have in my outbox of Outlook that I type and I'm like, no, I'm not going to send that because they need to handle it on their own. I don't need to interject. They can handle it. Leave it alone. So working on the business, not in the business, and going back to the 80-20 rule of as long as they're doing things your way 80% of the time, you have to be okay with that 20% that is not done 100% your way, but still gets the job done. And that's where I kind of struggle. So 2024 is really trying to step back, work on the business, not always in the business, not always sitting in ops all day long, not living in my email, working on some bigger things throughout the year.
Yeah. That's a great catch, man, and such an important protocol for all leaders to take a look at. And a lot of people holding on to things, not delegating, not letting go
Yeah.
because it just, maybe we might have to go back and fix that, or it may not show up exactly how I would do it. But man, if you get somebody who can go 80% of the way that you will do it and they enjoy
Mm-hmm.
doing it, most of the time they're gonna end up doing it better than you.
Yeah. Yeah. Let them do it. Let them
Mm-hmm.
do it.
Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about vulnerability a little bit, and then I want one more question after that to add on here. But well, how does vulnerability work in your space for creating an intentional work environment?
I think it's crucial. Vulnerability. It's kind of a bad word. Like, oh, I'm the top dog. I can't be vulnerable. No, BS. It. We're not robots. We're not here just moving chess pieces. We're all people. If you're wrong, admit it. If you're right, admit it. You know that leads to a stronger work bond of yeah, hey, that's on me. That's my mistake. We had a driver last year who made a mistake driving, and it was somewhat tied to something I had previously said of how to be operational in the truck or whatever, and I never updated our process on that. So that was on me. I mean that ticket was on me. So taking ownership of saying, hey, that's all on me. I'll take full brunt of it, but I also expect the same from everyone else. Hey, if you mess up, say it. Let's get to the bottom of why it happened. Let's fix it. Let's make sure the customer's good. Let's try and retain the customer if it's that big of an issue. But accepting responsibility regardless of where you're at in the organizational chart. I mean, I think vulnerability plays into that so big that you can't have an ego that gets in the way of that.
You got it. Great answer, man. So you're a young guy. You've been building this thing up for 20, for 10 years since you were 20. So you're only
Yeah.
30. How many people you got working for you?
I think we're at 12 or 13.
Okay. So we got a good, solid, growing team.
Mm-hmm.
What was different for you than say the another person who may have just gone in and done a regular career, gone, graduated university at 22, go work for one of the big companies, something like that? Why was your path so different?
I think a lot of it was just determination and drive. Also, opportunity. I was blessed with opportunity. Didn't come from a family business that I could take over. I was intentional about trying to learn things, and a lot of it was dumb luck or right place at the right time. I remember going in. My parents set up an investment portfolio from when I was a kid that was supposed to be for college. I decided I wasn't going to pull any money out of that. I was going to work and pay for college myself out of my own pocket. So I remember going in after halfway through college and meeting with the financial advisor, the once a year deal. And I said, hey, what books can I read? I mean, I'm trying to learn as much about business as possible. And, she pointed to her bookshelf and said, if you haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, read it. I mean, I grabbed it that afternoon, read it. I took stuff out of that book. I've taken stuff out of a lot of books. I hated to read in high school. I mean, I would get the cliff notes. I would BS my way through the papers. I hated to read. But since I graduated high school and getting to pick what I like to read, nonfiction, always trying to pick up on a nugget that we can implement. Um, that's been big. So I think it goes back to your question of what was different. I think intentionality was a little different. I had bigger aspirations. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, I took steps to try and figure it out. And I think a lot of times people get sucked into, I'm just going to get a job. I'm going to use my degree. I'm going to do these things, which is great. It all depends on how you're wired. And I truly believe that everyone's wired a little different. Some people are wired to, they got to be their own boss or want to be their own boss. And some people are just perfectly fine, being working in a company and succeeding that way, working your way up the organizational chart within a big company. So I mean, it's all preference, I think. But for me, it was a little bit of intentionality, a little bit of dumb luck, and just a pretty decent work ethic, I would say.
Yeah. That's a fantastic story, by the way. Thank you for sharing that. Because I was curious, how'd you get started, and
Yeah,
where that all come from? So,
Robert Kiyosaki.
exactly. And if you guys have not read that, or if you don't know what the four quadrants are, if you can't tell me what
Yeah.
the four quadrants are right now, you need to go get that book again and reread it. And here's why. We live in a world right now, I think, Josh, where so many people have been following a program, and probably the program that they were given.
Mhm.
They're following that program unintentionally. And the unintentional downstream consequence to that is that you don't have your personal sovereignty at the level that you could have it. And if you go and solve for those four quadrants, you can,
Yeah.
at least from a financial perspective. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to explain the four quadrants and let people go get
No,
them.
no, I think that's a great
You
one.
do the
If you
homework
have,
yourself.
yeah, if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I recommend it. People come into my office, you can't see it. My bookshelf's behind my computers, but they say, "Why do you have 5 copies of Rich Dad Poor Dad on your shelf? That makes no sense." I said, "Well, have you read it?" "Well, no." I said, "Well, take a copy." I
Yeah.
mean, that's what they're there for. Take a copy, read it. If you don't read it, give it back because someone else is going to get more out of it than you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, man. I love it, dude. This has been a fun conversation. Thanks for sharing everything today, and appreciate you being on here.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff, man.